For nearly a century, the World Cup barely noticed Egypt. Now the entire tournament is beginning to feel their presence. This is a nation that won a record 7 Africa Cup of Nations titles, became the first African and Middle Eastern country to ever play at a FIFA World Cup back in 1934, and built one of the richest football histories on the continent. Yet despite all that success, Egypt arrived at the 2026 World Cup having never won a single match at the tournament, never reached the knockout stage, and spent more than 90 decades searching for a moment that matched their continental greatness. Now, everything has changed. Under the leadership of Egyptian legend Hossam Hassan, the Pharaohs have gone unbeaten, ended a 92-year wait for their first World Cup victory, eliminated Australia in a dramatic penalty shootout to claim their first ever knockout win, and transformed from one of the tournament's biggest historical underachievers into one of its hardest teams to break down. Mohamed Salah, playing through a hamstring concern, has finally begun writing the World Cup chapter his international career had always been missing, while players like Imam Ashur, Omar Marmoush, and a remarkably disciplined defensive unit have shown that this team is no longer relying on one superstar to carry them. And now comes their biggest test yet. Argentina may still be the defending world champions, but they needed extra time to survive a fearless Cape Verde side. Egypt, meanwhile, arrive unbeaten, full of belief, and carrying the momentum of a nation that has already rewritten its football history. So, is this simply an unforgettable underdog story, or has the 2026 FIFA World Cup quietly developed an Egypt problem? This is how Africa's most successful football nation finally erased decades of World Cup disappointment, and why every team still chasing the trophy should be paying very close attention to the Pharaohs. Egypt were never supposed to be a World Cup underdog. That's what makes this story so fascinating. We're not talking about a small football nation enjoying one lucky tournament. We're talking about the most decorated country in AFCON history. 7 continental titles, 10 finals, 3 consecutive crowns in 2006, 2008 and 2010. A football culture backed by 120 million people, where the national team isn't just followed, it's carried with expectation every single time they step onto a pitch. And yet, the World Cup kept telling a completely different story. Egypt were the first African and Arab nation to play at a World Cup back in 1934. Then they disappeared from the tournament for 56 years before returning in 1990. Another long wait until 2018. Before 2026, Egypt had played 7 World Cup matches and never won one. 0 wins, 2 draws, 5 defeats, 5 goals scored, 12 conceded. In Africa, giants. At the World Cup, almost invisible. The contradiction was genuinely strange. That contrast followed Salah for years. He became the face of modern Egyptian football, carrying the biggest individual expectations since the golden AFCON generation. But even his international story was marked by pain. At the 2018 World Cup, he arrived still recovering from the shoulder injury suffered in the Champions League final, missed the opener against Uruguay, returned to score against Russia and Saudi Arabia, and Egypt still lost all 3 matches and went home pointless. Then AFCON final heartbreaks, penalty shootout exits, missing World Cup qualification entirely in 2022. One of the greatest players Egypt has ever produced, and the World Cup chapter his career deserved kept not arriving. That's why 2026 feels different. But the change didn't start in North America. It started with embarrassment. At AFCON 2023, played in early 2024, Egypt looked like a team with talent and no control. Drew all 3 group games 2-2, went out to DRC Congo in the round of 16 on penalties after yet another draw.
4 matches, 4 draws, 7 goals conceded. For a country that built its greatest eras on defensive authority and tournament discipline, that was an identity crisis made public. Rui Vitória was dismissed, and Egypt turned to Hossam Hassan. That appointment wasn't just a coaching change. Hassan is Egypt's all-time leading scorer and national icon, someone who understands the emotional weight of that shirt better than almost anyone. His impact wasn't only tactical, it was psychological. Egypt became harder to beat almost immediately, more compact, more aggressive in duels, more responsible without the ball. Not a team searching for rhythm anymore, a team being built for tournament football. Qualifying confirmed it, opened with a 6-0 win over Djibouti, Salah scoring 4, then a 2-0 win over Sierra Leone, a hard-fought 3-2 win over Burkina Faso, a 1-1 draw with Guinea-Bissau showing resilience, and qualification sealed with a 3-0 win over Djibouti. Salah scored on the exact date he'd sent Egypt to the 2018 World Cup 8 years earlier. 8 wins, 2 draws across the campaign, unbeaten, qualified with a game to spare. The tactical picture was clear. Compact defensive block, central spaces reduced, opponents forced wide. Salah with more freedom to choose moments rather than carrying every attack from deep. Marmoush giving them direct running and transition threat. Ashore becoming important between midfield and the final third. Set pieces turning into a genuine weapon. And above all, collective defensive responsibility. That's the real foundation of everything that followed. Because before Salah's Panenka, before Abdelmajid buried the winning penalty against Australia, Egypt had already become something different from the decorated African giant that kept shrinking on the world stage. More organised, mentally tougher, unbeaten in qualifying, and for the first time in a long time, a team whose history felt like a weapon rather than a weight. So, the question worth asking is simple. How did this version of Egypt go from continental disappointment to one of the most dangerous problems at the 2026 World Cup?
Egypt didn't just qualify from Group G, they forced people to look at them differently. The Belgium draw was the first statement, not a lucky point, a proper competitive performance. Belgium had more of the ball and created pressure, but Egypt stayed compact, protected the middle, and made the final pass consistently harder. Belgium produced 15 shots worth 1.31 expected goals. Egypt had 14 shots worth 1.07. That's not a team that got away with one. That's a team that competed properly against the European heavyweight and looked completely unbothered by the occasion. Then came New Zealand, and that's the night everything changed. Egypt fell behind when Finn Sermon scored from a corner in the first half. For a second, it looked like another old Egyptian World Cup story was beginning. Expectation, pressure, frustration, exit. This version of Egypt didn't follow that script. They came out after the break with more aggression, pushed higher, and attacked the game properly. Mustafa Zico equalised in the 58th minute. Salah put Egypt ahead 9 minutes later after combining with Zico, and Trezeguet finished it with a late header from Salah's corner. 3-1, Egypt's first ever victory at a FIFA World Cup. 92 years after becoming the first African nation to play at the tournament, they finally won a match on the biggest stage. That result wasn't just 3 points, it released decades of frustration in one evening. The Iran match was tense, physical and uncomfortable. Egypt didn't look fluent, they didn't need to. Tournament football isn't always about looking good. Sometimes it's about managing danger and doing enough to survive. Iran even thought they'd found a late winner before VAR intervened. Egypt held on, finished the group unbeaten, and reached the knockouts for the first time in their history. Already historic, but the real test was still coming. Australia were physical, direct, energetic and dangerous from set pieces. Volpato struck the crossbar from distance inside the opening minutes, which was Australia's way of saying they hadn't come to sit back and admire Egypt's journey. Egypt responded like a serious team. 13th minute, Imam Ashur gave them the lead from a set-piece second phase.
First shot blocked, Karim Hafez recycled the attack, crossed back in, Ashur stooped at the far post to head home. A midfielder who hadn't scored for Egypt before this tournament, producing in a knockout match. That keeps happening with this team. Australia had Jordan Boss go off injured at half-time and had to adjust. Straight after the restart, Egypt should have buried it. Marmoush ran clear and dragged his finish wide. In knockout football, that kind of miss carries consequences. 55th minute, Australia equalised. Aidan O'Neill delivered from the left. Mohamed Hani got his header badly wrong. Own goal, his second of the tournament, and suddenly Egypt were in the exact emotional territory that used to break them. This time they didn't break. They kept playing, kept defending, kept finding moments. Salah, past fit despite a hamstring concern, created Egypt's biggest late chances. A brilliant cross for Rami Rabia, whose header was somehow pushed away by Patrick Beach with one hand. Then a setup for Hossam Hassan, blocked crucially by Harry Suter. Egypt kept knocking, Australia kept surviving. Extra time was tight and cautious. Then Popovic made one of the boldest calls of the tournament, replacing Beach with Patrick Ryan just before penalties. Bold move, wrong call. Egypt were perfect from the spot. Salah scored with a Panenka, the kind of penalty that only works when nerve and technique arrive at the same time. Australia missed from Suter and Harrington. Hossam Abdelmajid stepped up and buried the winner. Egypt 4-2 on penalties. First World Cup knockout victory. This was bigger than a shootout. Egypt conceded an own goal, missed a gilt-edged chance, survived a late push, watched Australia swap goalkeepers ahead of penalties, and still didn't flinch. That's mentality. That's when you know a team has genuinely changed. Now comes Argentina, defending champions who had their own difficult night against Cape Verde, surviving 3-2 in extra time with Messi opening the scoring, Cape Verde twice levelling, and the decisive moment arriving in the 111th minute from Dine Borges' own goal from a Messi set piece. Argentina advanced, but they didn't cruise. Cape Verde stretched them and exposed moments of vulnerability. Egypt arrive unbeaten, disciplined, and carrying genuine belief. Tactically, it's fascinating. Argentina want Messi between the lines, receiving in central pockets where one pass can dismantle a defensive shape. Egypt's job is to deny those clean central touches, stay narrow and force Argentina wide, but sitting too deep invites sustained pressure. So Egypt also need their transition threat. Salah attacking the weak side, Marmoush running in behind, and set pieces that have already punished teams in this tournament. Argentina will be favourites, and rightly so. Champions pedigree, more attacking control, the best player of his generation still deciding matches. But Egypt have already shown they can survive difficult moments, manage pressure, and punish teams when games become tense. Before 2026, Egypt had no World Cup wins, no knockout victories, no proof that their continental greatness could travel globally. Now they have their first World Cup win, first knockout qualification, first knockout victory, an unbeaten tournament run, and an entire nation dreaming bigger with every match. The 2026 World Cup doesn't have an Egypt problem because Egypt are favourites. It has an Egypt problem because every great team left now knows exactly what the Pharaohs have become. A disciplined, fearless side nobody can afford to underestimate.